I have been every voice.
You are the chosen one!
Anakin! Anakin!
This is where the fun begins.
Inside your head.
Hello my dear friends and welcome back to another Bad Batch video. So today we're going to be breaking down all of the major Easter eggs in this week's episode. I'm going to start with the Easter eggs and then I'll give you my thoughts on the episode and we'll talk about it more broadly. So without any more jibber jabber, let's dive straight into it. This week's episode was titled Cornered, and we start the episode on the Havoc Marauder where the Bad Batch are discussing their next destination. At first they're going to head for Ida Floor, but it's not an inhabited planet. Now if you guys didn't realise, Ida Floor is just a rearranged version of Florida. Our heroes end up opting for Pantora, which we've seen before in the Clone Wars. Upon arriving, the security manager on Pantora is a Celestin. Celestins are a classic species we saw in the original trilogy, notably in characters like 9 Num and 10 Num, and believe it or not, while we have seen them in Rebels, they've only ever featured in one episode of the Clone Wars. So I think it was really cool to see them here. We find out that he's working with Fennec Shand, and when he contacts her, his codename is Rasper 6. Rasper 6 first featured in the 1993 book Monsters and Aliens from George Lucas, which is a publication that combines creature designs and photographs from various Lucasfilm projects, all created by George Lucas himself. In that book, Rasper 6 was a terrestrial moon. So I guess you could say this is a very niche callback. Later on, when the Bad Batch wander through the streets of Pantora, we see a couple of Tuka cats, which are what Wrecker's toy Lula is modelled after. Tukas or Tuka cats were a subspecies of feline cats. While they were very popular as pets on Pantora, a lot of people saw them as a nuisance. Something really interesting that we see next is the public approval of the Empire. As the clone troopers walk through the streets, the public starts cheering. And once again we see Rampart. At this point, right at the start of the creation of the Empire, it was only pirates, smugglers, and ex-separatists who were routinely imprisoned and destroyed by the Empire. Apart from those groups, the Empire faced very little resistance to their rule. I guess the only exception here would be the Outer Rim world of Ryloth where Twi'leks come from. But on Pantora, just like a lot of planets, the Empire was appreciated. Since the Bad Batch is in need of credits, Hunter tries to sell a pyrodentin explosive to a vendor. Now these were first seen in The Force Awakens. They were a model of explosive charge which played a pivotal role in the Resistance's success in destroying the First Order's Starkiller base. At the same market, Omega wants to buy a Trooper doll, one which is almost identical to the one that young Jyn Erso owned at the start of Rogue One. When Echo is then sold off and put in charge of the droids, the feminine protocol droid is remarkably similar to the one we saw in The Mandalorian. Given that Fennec Shand is also in this episode, there is the possibility that it is the same one. Then again, protocol droids are very common in the galaxy, but it seems like a deliberate Easter egg placed there by Dave Filoni. Now something which really needs to be spoken about is the traffic sequences, which are very similar to the ones at the start of Attack of the Clones, when Anakin and Obi-Wan hunted down the shape-shifting Claudite Zam Wessell. I believe that Lucasfilm were trying to draw parallels because the situation is similar. In episode 2, Jango Fett hired a female assassin bounty hunter, and in this case, Fennec Shand, a female assassin, has been hired by the Kaminoans and is also probably working with Boba Fett, and in this scenario, it's to kidnap Omega, the clone that the Kaminoans are after. One airspeeder that we see in the traffic sequence is being piloted by a male Aquilish, the same species as Ponda Baba, also known as Walrus Man from the Mos Eisley Cantina. Obviously it's not him, but it's fascinating just how many classic Star Wars species we see in the Bad Batch. So those are some of the major Easter eggs from the episode, and now I think it's worth discussing it on the whole. The first thing we learned is in reference to Wrecker's headache. While it doesn't seem like he still has one anymore, it isn't exactly clear. After getting up after being defeated by Fennec Shand, he holds his head in the same area, but it's not a recurring issue throughout the episode. I've seen people say that he no longer has a headache, which means one of two things. Either he was faking it in the previous episode so that he had time to surprise Omega by fixing up her own bedroom, or alternatively he wasn't faking it, but Tech learned how to remove the chip, and we'll find that out in a later episode. We also learned that the clone the Kaminoans are seemingly after is Omega. Something which follows on logically from the very end of the episode is that we are definitely going to see Boba Fett hands down. There's no bigger tease than this episode, and I feel as though the show is going to serve to show us the backstory of how Boba and Fennec know each other. I made an entire video about it, so do go check that one out. Now one mystery of this episode is how Wrecker was so easily defeated by Fennec Shand. I know that Fennec Shand is a strong person, but honestly it felt like a creative misstep. Wrecker has been engineered by the best cloners in the galaxy to be a bulk of muscle, and yet he's so easily defeated by Fennec Shand as if it was nothing. If you remember the training sequence they went through in the first episode, it was very intense, so to think he could just be easily defeated by Fennec Shand like this, and it's kind of bad for continuity. In light of this, here is my honest review of the episode. I thought it was promising and there were some really solid moments, but overall guys, I must say it was a little bit disappointing, especially with how great the last 3 episodes have been. For one thing, it felt way too short, and just as things were beginning to pick up, it ended. The chase scene was far too long, and it seems like almost in every episode the ship needs repairing. But I won't be too negative because it still was a decent episode. Having said that, I love the little callbacks to the original trilogy, the dynamic which is similar to Attack of the Clones, the visuals, and of course the colours on the planet of Pantora. I think that about 10 more minutes of this episode would have been the sweet spot if they were trying to build suspense, because this one really felt like it was cut way too short, and it's honestly not been my favourite episode so far, which is such a shame because it's the one where they introduce Fennec Shand, who I absolutely love and is one of my favourite characters. Now don't get me wrong, the episode did move the story along, but not far enough. I get that the series is going to be 16 episodes long, so there is plenty of time, but it felt like there was a lot lacking in this one. I do believe the direction of the show is headed where it needs to, and something unexpected is definitely down the line. While I was watching the episode, I couldn't help but think that while the Kaminoans are after Omega, I feel as though they're probably going to fail in capturing her. I can't help but feel that the primary purpose of this episode was world building, and of course to introduce a new threat in the form of Fennec Shand. I'm really hoping that we get a longer episode next week, because now that she's been introduced, they should establish the direction of the plot from here on out. And hopefully the ship doesn't need repairing once more. But what did you guys think of the episode? Did you enjoy it? I really hope you did. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments down below, and also tell me if you enjoyed this layout of breakdown. If you liked today's video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, be sure to hit the notification bell to be alerted each and every time that I post new videos, and if you're feeling generous, please consider checking out my Patreon. The link is in the description down below, so do be sure to check that out. I will be discussing this episode in a bit more depth in upcoming videos in the next week, and hopefully this week goes by quickly so that we get our next installment of the Bad Batch sooner rather than later. I'm Star Wars Meg, wishing you all a phenomenal rest of the day, no matter where you dwell in the galaxy. Have a good one.